Hello, I'm Senator Rod Grams, and welcome to this month's edition of our Washington Report. Now, while serving in the Senate, I have traveled throughout Minnesota holding town hall meetings on my plan for retirement security. As we all know, Social Security will soon go broke. When it comes to saving our nation's retirement system, the biggest risk we face is doing nothing at all. I've talked to countless Minnesotans who want a better option for their retirement dollars. One such Minnesotan wrote a good analogy in a Minnesota newspaper, and he said, imagine a financial planner coming to you and offering you an investment plan in which he would take 15.3% of the first $76,000 that you earned during your entire lifetime and guarantees you only a 1.8% or less return on your money. And when you retire at the age of 65, you'll get just a portion of that back every month. But in addition, if you die before you retire, he gets to keep all of your money. Now, would you entrust him with your money? I think obviously the question that he posed would be no. You'd be better off putting your money under your mattress. You'd have more money for retirement. Unfortunately, this is exactly what Social Security offers, and I look forward to taking this time to discuss what can be done to help preserve, protect, and also strengthen our retirement system. As I said, within the next few years, the system is going to not have the ability to pay the benefits that it has in the past. I always like to tell people, if you look back over the last 65 years, Social Security has done what we've asked it to do, and that is provide retirement benefits for millions of Americans. But if you look ahead the next 30 years, the system cannot maintain those levels of benefits. And what we're facing is a couple of options if we do nothing at all, and that would be to cut retirement benefits from Social Security. Or we could raise your taxes even higher, or we could raise the retirement age. Now, all three of those are options that I do not support, and I don't think you support either for yourself or for your children. So if we look down the road, a system, as I've mentioned, stretched to its limits. 78 million baby boomers are going to begin retiring in the year 2008. Social Security spending will begin to exceed tax revenues as early as the year 2015. Now, you've all heard of the trust fund. Well, there is no trust and there is no fund in the Social Security Trust Fund. Over the last 20 years, basically what Washington has done is overcharged you in the FICA tax, charged more than they needed. So today we're bringing in $110 in benefits, but only paying out $100 in benefits. And what we've been doing then is putting the extra $10 in the savings account or the trust fund. But the fact is that the government has taken the cash and spent it on other government programs and replaced it with an IOU. There are some that will say Social Security trust funds won't go broke until the year 2037 because all of those IOUs are in there and to be backed up by the government. But if you take an IOU, write it out for $1 million and go put it into your checking account and see how many checks your bank will allow you to write against that IOU. None until you replace it with cash, and that's basically what we're going to have to do as early as the year 2015, and that is to begin raising taxes to cover the cost of cashing in those IOUs to be able to pay the level of benefits that the government has already provided. Now, if we look at the next chart here, the coming Social Security crisis, our pay-as-you-go retirement system won't meet the challenge of the demographic change. You know, of all the years you have worked and paid into Social Security, here in Washington, there is not an account with your name on it that has $1 for Social Security, not $1 for your retirement. Again, it's a pay-as-you-go system, so monies that are brought in at the first of the month are paid out in benefits at the end of the month, except for those as surplus that we have now, and those go into the trust fund, and as I said, you know, the government has been spending those, and we'll talk about that more in a moment. But why are we in a system where it's stretched to the limits? Because the demographics have changed and it makes the system unable to sustain itself. If we were going to design the system today, we could never go to the system that we have because it's not sustainable because of the demographics, and that is the number of people working compared to the number of those on retirement. So when you hear those people say, all we have to do is tinker with it and keep the current system, it's like putting a Band-Aid over cancer. We can't cure it. All we can do is watch it fester and get worse underneath that system. In 1940, for instance, we had 100 people working for every person on retirement. So if you were going to pay, say, $1,000 a month benefit, each one of those 100 people would only have to pay $10. Today, in 2000, there is only about 2.5 people working for every person on retirement, and by the year 2025, for our children and grandchildren, there's less than 2 people working according to estimates. So for this $1,000 benefits, our children and grandchildren will have to be paying over $500 a month to maintain the system. So you can see where it's going to get costly, strained to the limits, and putting such a burden on the next generation that it would be hard for them to make these payments. And we don't want to start what I like to refer to as intergenerational warfare, and that's what could happen. What we're doing right now today, as I mentioned, we're in a surplus mode right now where we actually are collecting more money than we need to pay the benefits. So we have the surplus. But by the year 2015, we're going to start bringing in less money. So now we'll only bring in 90 and have to pay out $100 in benefits. That's when we were going to go to that savings account, the trust fund, and draw those revenues to meet the level of benefits. But as I said, there's no money in there but IOUs, and we're going to have to go to the taxpayer to cash in the IOU to bring the money back to pay the benefits on Social Security. So in other words, we're going to be looking at increasing taxes in the billions of dollars per year, beginning as early as the year 2015. And if you look down the road here, and what does this mean? We're going to have about $20+ trillion in unfunded liabilities of all the monies we collect from workers to meet the benefits that the government has promised. And just at today's level, we're going to be $20+ trillion short. So that's the question, is how are we going to make up this $20 trillion? And you hear a lot of them say, well, we're going to tinker with the Social Security system. In Washington's dictionary, the word tinker means tax increase. And you're going to be looking at tax increases of over $20 trillion in order to maintain just Social Security, in order to cash in the IOUs. That only takes us up to here. But then how are we going to fund the rest of this? And that's where the system needs to be overhauled or changed in order to secure a safe and sound retirement system for those on retirement today, for those who want to retire on the system tomorrow and in the future. All right, the biggest risk, like I said, is doing nothing at all. We can bury our heads in the sand and ignore the problem, but someday somebody is going to have to make some tough decisions. We might be able to limp past this election or another election, but sooner or later we're going to have to face the facts that Social Security is underfunded, $20+ trillion. The trust funds, nothing but IOUs that come due and payable beginning as early as 2015 or maybe even earlier. And in order to keep paying promised Social Security benefits at the level we have today, we would have to raise the FICA tax that is withheld from your checks every week by at least 50% within the next 20 years in order to maintain that. Now, if we look out over the next few years, right now we're paying 15.3% in FICA taxes for Medicare and Social Security. Now, if we add on just the Social Security increase, not talking about what we might need to save Medicare, because that's a whole nother issue and a whole nother show to talk about, but if we go out just to the year 2030, we could be looking at estimates of intermittent projections or at a higher cost projection, and you can see how these continue to grow in the out years, but we would be paying between 22.5% and 28% of wages to go just to fund this system. So if you add on the federal tax of 28%, you're at 56. If you add on the state tax, which is about 8.5%, you're at 64, near 65. Now you add in your sales tax, your property taxes, and others. Our children are going to be facing tax rates as high as 70%. And that is if we just throw in the concerns of Social Security today without trying to meet all the other needs that we have. When I said about going to the investment window and having a fellow tell you, well, put your money into my account and this is what I will do. Well, right now, if you're retiring, you're going to get about 1.8% return on your money. Among our minority population, already, they're in a negative position today. So it's many of our minority population that is subsidizing the retirement of others in this country. But if you're under 50 years old, this average return will also drop to zero or maybe even below within the next couple of years. So we're telling our children and grandchildren that they're going to get a return of less than zero. In other words, a negative return. Again, it would be better if you put the money under your mattress or in a tin can in the backyard. But then compare it to the markets. The markets over the last 75 years have returned more than 7% annually. This is after you take out inflation and other adjustments, but real return on the money of over 7% from the market. So the question is, are we going to look at a system that provides us a negative and low benefits, or are we going to try somewhere where we can maximize the benefits for our retirees? There is no Social Security account with your name on it, as I mentioned, in Washington, D.C. And again, in the President's own budget, when I mentioned there's nothing but IOUs in the trust fund, and there's no cash in there, But in their budget, they had to be truthful about that, and this is the words that are contained in the President's budget. The source is the Office of Management and Budget for the budget of the United States government, fiscal year 2000. And it says, these trust fund balances are available to finance future benefit payments and other trust fund expenditures. Sounds good, but only in a bookkeeping sense, because they are claims on the Treasury that when redeemed will have to be financed by raising taxes, borrowing from the public, that is going back into debt, or reducing benefits, and I don't think that's what we want to pass on as far as a retirement system, or other expenditures. You know, this is transportation, education, health care. Are we willing to take cuts in these in order to support other programs? And that's the question we're facing. So this is the truth. There's nothing in the trust fund but IOUs that will have to be redeemed because they're claims on the Treasury, and that means we're going to have to go to future workers and increase their taxes in order to pay these benefits. That's why Congress and the President, Democrats, Republicans, have all agreed we need to have a lockbox on all the Social Security surplus, and that is to save Social Security trust fund dollars for nothing but Social Security and to keep Washington's big spenders from using the trust fund or other dollars for other government spending. I also added another lockbox. The Graham's lockbox would trigger an automatic reduction across the board in discretionary government spending. In other words, our spending in Washington is only a science, and so are the revenue projections. And my lockbox says that if we are wrong in that guesstimate, so in other words, we spend more out of Washington than we actually bring in, that we have to reduce all other budgets so we do not dip into Social Security. And that might only have to be by 0.003%, say. So if it was a $100 budget, they might only get $99.97. But everybody would reduce their budgets a little bit so we would live up to our promise of not taking one dime from Social Security. I've been working on a plan to save Social Security for the last 7 years. 3 years ago, I introduced a plan called the Personal Security and Wealth and Retirement Act. But as we were putting the plan together, we said it had to have 6 basic principles. And first of all is to protect all current and future beneficiaries. If you're on retirement today, if you're on Social Security, we've got to guarantee you your protection, that your benefits will not be cut or reduced. Second, allow freedom of choice in a system. For those who want to stay on Social Security, have that option. But those who want to move into a private retirement account should have that option as well. Preserve the safety nets Social Security right now has for disability and also survivors benefits. Our plan would have to match that. Make Americans better off, not worse. Right now, today, nearly 20% of Americans, when they retire into poverty, and the majority of those are women. We've got to make sure that when Americans retire, nobody retires into poverty. Create the fully funded system. This is my plan, the Personal Security and Wealth and Retirement Act. And bottom line, no tax increases for the system. In other words, we're not going to reduce your benefits, and we're not going to increase your taxes in order to support the system. How the Graham's plan for retirement security works: you may divert 10% of your income to a personal retirement account, the PRA, to be managed by a government-approved private investment company. And I refer to this, it's like the banking industry. The banking industry is private, but it operates under very strict rules of safety and soundness, overseen by the Treasury Department and also the Federal Reserve to make sure that your funds are handled properly for safety and soundness. And this would be much the same, but it would be a private investment company that would be operating under these rules, and to guarantee that the monies that you have in these accounts would be safe. You're going to hear a lot of scare tactics out there. You're going to hear people say this is a lottery, we're rolling the dice, we're risking your retirement. Those are all just that, scare tactics. This system, safe and sound, just like putting your money into an IRA or your 401k, or putting your money into a savings account that is federally Deposit Insurance Corporation protected, the FDIC, these would be the same. Your accounts would be safe, sound, and insured. Personal retirement accounts offer more retirement security. If we take a worker who makes $36,000 a year, allow him to put 10% a year away into a private retirement account and get the average return of 7% a year, this is how it compares. Under Social Security, today the maximum you could get, by the way, from putting 12.4% into it, is about $1,280. If you could put just 10% or $3,600 a year into an account that drew 7% interest, you would get $6,514 a month in retirement benefits. $1,280 compared to $6,514. And these seniors would not have to worry about looking to the government for additional dollars in order to afford prescription drugs or other things they need. They would have the money in monthly benefits and wouldn't have to look to the government. Based on a family income of $58,475 a year, a married couple, this is an average across the country, and if they're allowed to put, and we compare 2%, 6%, or 10% of your wages, because you're going to hear different plans out there, but if we take 2% of Social Security, put it into the private markets, after 40 years you'd have $278,000, and you'd be able to couple this with about an 80% of what you currently get in Social Security. So this would be much better than what we have today. But imagine if you could put 10% of your money into an account, a personal retirement account, after 40 years, for an average family, you would have $1.4 million put away in that account after 40 years. What would you rather retire on, $1.4 million or thereabouts, or a system that provides or would promise you even less money? Again, what we're trying to do is to maximize benefits to the recipients and also minimize the tax burden on the taxpayers. Now, there's systems that are already in effect. If we go to Galveston County, Texas, for instance, they have personal retirement accounts. Back when Social Security began, President Roosevelt was concerned about having only a public system. And he advocated, and there was a bill introduced and passed that said there would also be private retirement accounts. That got struck out in conference. It was promised to be brought back in. It never was. But for public employees at that time who had their own retirement accounts for them under the government entities, whether it was cities, counties, or state, or federal, they could keep those retirement accounts and they would not have to get into Social Security. There are 5 million Americans today that are able to have their own private retirement accounts. One are the workers in Galveston County, Texas. They started this, by the way, in 1980 because an administrator there saw the loophole that gave them the option to get out of it, so they set up their own private retirement accounts, opted out of Social Security. Congress, a short time later, closed the door so nobody else can get out, but they were able to. But under Social Security, some comparisons. A death benefit under Social Security, $253. My dad passed away at 61. This is what the family received in a death benefit, nothing else from Social Security. His lifetime investment in Social Security paid off $253 after his death. Galveston County has a minimum of $75,000 in death benefits. Disability benefits, the maximum under Social Security on average wage, $1,280. Galveston pays $2,749. Galveston has a very conservative plan. Their retirement dollars are invested just in insurance annuities, one of the most conservative ways to do it, and they're still outpacing Social Security in their benefits. Retirement benefits, average per month, again, Social Security, $1,280. Galveston County, $4,790 a month in retirement benefits. One lady, a lady named Wendy Cohill, her husband died at the age of 44 from a heart attack. She was 42. She got a death benefit check of $126,000 plus what he had in his account, plus the survivor's benefits that come from the account. She was able to go back to school, finish her college degree in order to keep her family together and live in their same house. Under Social Security, she would have received $255 plus some of the survivor's benefits. And she wrote a letter in an editorial to the Wall Street Journal, and she said, "Thank God that some wise men privatized Social Security here. If I had regular Social Security, I'd be broke." In other words, she would get $1,280 or less, and her with 3 children would have been in poverty and would have been on the government dole. And instead, she was able to take care of her family, finish her education, all because of the private system compared to Social Security. San Diego, another entity that has their own personal retirement accounts not covered by Social Security. A 30-year-old employee who earns a salary of $30,000 for 35 years. If this was a constant salary for 30 years, they put in 6%, the government puts in 6%, but their PRA, they would receive $3,000 a month in benefits compared to $1,077 under Social Security. So City of San Diego enjoys nearly 3 times more in benefits under their private retirement plan than you or I will get under Social Security. The difference between San Diego's system of PRAs and Social Security is more than just a difference in a check. Now, some of our senators here in Washington, Barbara Boxer, Dianne Feinstein, Ted Kennedy, some of the more liberal members of the Senate, wrote a letter to President Clinton because under the Clinton plan, He would eliminate all those private retirement accounts and bring all Americans into Social Security. That was part of his plan, along with investing 1%, a government pooling of your money, which Chairman Alan Greenspan said would be the worst thing we could do. But these three senators wrote a letter to the president basically telling him to leave San Diego alone, because they said millions of our constituents will receive higher retirement benefits from their current public pensions than they would under Social Security. So they told the president, leave them alone, let them have their private retirement accounts. My question is, if Social Security is so much better, and by the way, these three senators all support keeping the current system as it is, if that's true, why don't we allow San Diego to enjoy Social Security? And if private retirement accounts are better, as they say in their letter, why can't you and I have private retirement accounts as well? U.S., we trail other countries saving the retirement system. Chile totally personalized the retirement accounts 18 years ago. By the way, 11 countries around the world have gone to personal retirement accounts. 30 others are considering it. The United States is really behind the curve on this. In the 18 years since Chile offered PRAs, 95% of all Chilean workers have created accounts. In other words, they have opted in to the system where they would give up the Social Security plan, and their plan, by the way, was modeled right after the same plan as ours, and our plan was modeled after one that began in Germany in 1880. And when Germany started their plan in 1880, they set the retirement age at 65. The average German worker lived to be 49.5 years old. When we passed it in 1935, we also kept the number of 65. The average American worker lived to be 59.5. So you can see Americans today are enjoying 20, 30 years of good, healthy retirement. It's much more than what the system was able or created to handle. And so we're in a much different situation. But in Chile, 95% of all the workers in Chile have created accounts. And by the way, their average return wasn't the 7% that we're estimating, because I think that's a very conservative number. Last year alone, they averaged 11.3% return on their money. And others that have gone to privatized retirement, Australia, Britain, Switzerland, I think New Zealand, a number of Central American countries and others are all offering their workers the option of personal retirement accounts that again provide much better benefits. In fact, if you go to Chile, get into a cab, ask the cab driver what's in his retirement account, he'll be able to pull out a passbook and tell you exactly what he has for his retirement. Because again, our system does not have an accumulation of wealth, no assets, no growth. As I said, it's a pay-as-you-go system. There's no account in Washington with your name on it that has $1 put away. But under this system, you begin to accumulate wealth that you can pass on to your heirs or spend as you wish. In Britain, 2 out of 3 British workers have now enrolled in what they call second-tier Social Security. They enjoyed a better than 10% return over the last 5 years. And a note here, the pool of PRAs in Britain exceed nearly $1.4 trillion. That's larger than the entire British economy, and it is also larger than the private pensions of all other European countries combined. So the British PRA's private retirement accounts exceed $1.4 trillion in benefits to be paid to those British workers. Any person over 30 years old who has paid into the Social Security system will receive a recognition bond. So if whatever you've paid in, say you've worked for 40 years and you say, I can't afford to let that go, what do I do? Well, our system says we'll pay you. If it's $41,000, if it's $91,000 or more, we'll give you a recognition bond that will go into your account, interest and inflation adjusted, so it'll be there when you retire. And that'll be the seed money for your personal retirement account. If an individual chooses to remain within the current system, the government, as I mentioned again, will guarantee your benefits, no age increase, no benefit reduction, no ifs, ands, or buts. So if you're on retirement right now on Social Security and want to stay on Social Security, remember your benefits are going to be guaranteed. The plan preserves a safety net for disadvantaged Americans, so nobody retires into poverty. Right now that level is $8,240. We say you can't retire with less than 150% of poverty, or that would be $12,400. If you've not accumulated enough in your account to buy an annuity to pay you that much, that's where the government would step in and fill the glass full, the only part of an entitlement program in this system. Funds that manage PRAs are required to buy life, disability insurance, again, that is the survivors and disability payments, and the federal government would make up the difference for those who fall short. So you will retire with 150% of poverty. Providing safety and soundness. Rules, again, similar to those that apply to IRAs, would apply to PRAs. A federal personal retirement investment board would oversee this. As I said, a private agency would make sure for safety and soundness that your account would be there, your funds would be insured and there for your retirement. And investment companies would require, again, to have the insurance plan and also a minimum return of no less than 2.5%. You decide when to retire. Right now, the government tells you how much you're going to pay, when you're going to retire, and how much you get when you retire. You have no choice in this at all. Under our plan, once you reach 150% of the poverty level, all the decisions are yours. When you retire, how you spend your money. You can buy the annuity, arrange for regular periodic withdrawals for the rest of it. If you have $1.4 million, it'll cost about $150 to buy the annuity, $150,000. The rest, the other $1.25 million, is yours to spend any way you want, as long as you have enough to pay that annuity, and everything, by the way, that you withdraw, free of income tax, no estate tax, no earnings tax on that. In divorce cases, the PRA treated as community property. Upon death, the PRA benefits go to your heirs, again, without estate taxes. This is one part of the program. You're building wealth. Under Social Security today, when you die, the government benefits from that because you no longer draw. But under this, all the money you've accumulated goes to your estate to give to your spouse, your children, or whoever you choose as your heirs. Workers could arrange PRAs for non-working children. Give them a head start. If you put $1,000 in your child's account when they're born, by the time they're 65 years old, that would grow to $250,000. So imagine what you could do if you could deduct up to 20% of your wage if you would like to, and you could put those additional percentages into your child's account or multiple children and give them a head start on retirement as well. But that's some options that you have. And again, bottom line, no new taxes to support the system. So I think when we look at what we're going to do with our Social Security system in the future, there will always be a plan for retirement benefits. The question is, what is that plan going to look like? Again, there are those here in Washington that advocate doing nothing. They call anything risky. The biggest risk is doing nothing at all. What they plan for your retirement is to raise the taxes, cut your benefits, and raise your retirement age. Those are some of the options on the table. I've heard many say that, and I don't think any senior citizen out there would want to see their retirement benefits today reduced. And I don't think that's what you want to leave for your children or grandchildren. There are options that we can do, and one of those are to look at privatizing all or part of Social Security. My plan is one of those options that will allow the workers the flexibility to put money into the account, determine when he's going to retire, how much he wants to draw out, and how he wants to spend, or how she wants to spend those dollars. So as we're debating this over the course of this year and hopefully into Congress next year, you're going to be an important part of that decision. Thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you again soon.